Hey guys, my name is Rob, and today we're going to be unboxing and doing at least an initial review of the Gamesir Tarantula Pro, or T3 Pro as it was previously advertised. This is a wireless PC controller which is also compatible with Switch, Android, and iOS, and is one of the more highly anticipated Gamesir controllers as it boasts a lot of features that we haven't previously seen from Gamesir. The controller has not officially launched in the US, but it is currently available for pre-order on Gamesir's website, and they state that it's expected to ship on September 30th. There are two versions, differentiated only by the charging station. If you want the smart charging stand, the bundle will run you $79.99 plus tax, or if you're not interested in the stand, you can purchase the standalone controller for $10 less. Although I virtually never play wireless, I opted for the stand because I sometimes make questionable decisions. The stand is cool, it's a smart charger, and it has RGB lighting, so there's that, I guess. This will be the first symmetrical layout Gamesir controller I've owned, which I'm a little skeptical about as I normally prefer the asymmetrical thumbsticks, but I know for some people that will be a pro, not a con. I don't get into debates about which is better. I honestly think it's just a preference thing based on what you're used to. I was a Halo guy originally, so I'm just partial to the Xbox layout. That said, I'm pretty excited to try this one out. I know it's not the most technical or meaningful new feature on the Tarantula, but I can't tell you how excited I am that they actually added trigger stops, if for no other reason than it gives me some hope for the G7 Pro having them also. So we've got the standard bag of GameSir paperwork, I'm assuming, and then a USB-A to USB-C cable. This is a noticeably lower quality cable than those included with all the cheaper GameSir controllers I've bought. It's not braided, and it's clearly not a 10-foot cable. So yeah, this is really just meant to connect the charging dock, which is fine, but they advertise a faster polling rate wired, so I kind of wish they'd included a longer cable for wired play. I do like that the charging dock has both USB-A and USB-C. I don't know if the USB-C supports fast charging or whatever, but it's nice to have options at least. We've got the USB dongle here with Gamesir on one side and a pairing button on the other. And again, I'm assuming all this documentation will be the same as with every Gamesir controller, minus the Xbox Live trial, of course. So yeah, we've got the Gamesir sticker, and the Guitar Pick QC card, the info pamphlet, and the monstrosity of an instruction booklet. Still not a fan of the giant fold-out instructions with tiny print that I can barely read. And then finally we've got the main attraction. I always appreciate when companies do the foam rings over the joysticks. These are TMR joysticks, so drift shouldn't be an issue, but still. I actually like the camo pattern on the face. It's like not too much, but just enough to stand out. It's really a pretty clean looking controller. You probably noticed this view window on the right grip. You can actually see the gears that turn the face buttons to swap between Xbox and Switch button layouts. We'll get into that for sure. So obviously a lot going on up here. Besides the home button, you have these three buttons in the center, which are the view button, the menu button, and the share button. But then you also have these four buttons on the sides, which are C1, 2, 3, and 4, so 4 of the 9 programmable buttons. Then this center is also a programmable button, which is T1. Then on top are T2 and T3, so 7 of the 9 programmable buttons, which means on the back we only have 2 programmable buttons, which kinda sucks. I lied, it sucks a lot. These two inner shoulder buttons, or whatever you want to call them, are not really accessible for gameplay functions. I have large hands and I can't realistically stretch to these while maintaining a standard grip on the controller. Like all Gamesir controllers I've used, these rear buttons are placed well and they feel good. They're pretty much flush with the rear shell, and they did include the lockout for these buttons so you can disable them if you want. And we finally have trigger stops on a Gamesir, and holy shit, they're mechanical, so you get instant mouse click triggers. I honestly wasn't sure I believed them, so I'm surprised and happy right now. They for some reason went with a mechanical D-pad and membrane ABXY buttons. I'm not sure why, and that's a little disappointing, but then again, this is Gamesir, so they'll probably release a Tarantula SE or Tarantula M or something in a month with mechanical face buttons, because that's just what they do. We're going to go ahead and see what type of customization we can or can't do now, but full disclosure, this controller is not yet supported by the Nexus app, which makes sense since the controller is not out yet. I've already tried connecting it via wired, wirelessly, and Bluetooth, and none of it works. That said, it does show up in the mobile app when connected to my phone or iPad via Bluetooth. These videos are not synced up at all. I took the two recordings separately, but since the Gamesir phone app doesn't support landscape mode, it only takes up a small portion of the screen here, so I just wanted to show some of the RGB customization you can do while I'm showing the other settings you can access via the mobile app. So we can set dead zones here. They were originally set to 5%, but I moved both to 0, and we'll check them in Gamepad Tester. You can also access controller testing here, but you'll notice that although the mobile app does recognize this as the Tarantula Pro, it doesn't show any of the programmable buttons in the tester. We can also set trigger dead zones as well as enabling hair trigger mode, though that only applies when the trigger stops are disabled. If you have the microswitch triggers on, they will be hair triggers by default, obviously. We can set and test vibration, either synced with the top slider bar or individually on the left and right slider bars. Then we have the RGB light settings, which again is not synced up on the right side of the screen, but as you can see for the light bar, you can change the animation pattern and adjust the brightness and speed. Then on the button tab, you can pretty much change the colors of all the face buttons however you want. You can set them all the same, all different. You can change the hue of each one. Way more customization than most of us will even want when it comes to RGB lighting. You can also change the controller from Xbox layout to Switch layout here, and you can set up different colors depending on which mode you're in. You can also do this on the fly. The M button is on the back of the controller, bottom center. If you hold the M button and the A button for about 3 seconds, the gamepad switches between Xbox and Switch layout. Lastly, you can map buttons via the mobile app, and although the programmable buttons didn't show up in the tester page, they all do show up here. You can also do this on the fly by holding the M button plus one of the programmable buttons. The home button will start to flash, then you press the button you want to assign somewhere, like the A button, and then press the programmable button you want to assign it to. One more thing, my charging stand I paid an extra $10 for is actually pretty cool. It auto shuts off when the controller is fully charged, and it also has auto wake, so if you pick the controller up from the charger, it turns on, and if you place the controller on the charger, it turns off. Now that I've adequately justified paying extra for something I'll never use, let's jump over to Gamepad LA to do some testing. We're going to start with wired, which should be 1000 Hz. And it is. Average polling rate of 996.66, average latency of 1 millisecond exactly. Jitter is good, consistency is good. We'll run it again, but that's looking great. We'll bump it up a bit this time and do 4000 inputs. And pretty much same results, so we're definitely getting 1000 Hz. We'll jump over and test out wireless now. And it is showing up as Gamesir dongle. According to Gamesir, it should be 500 Hz wireless. Yeah, this is not 500 Hz. I did 2000 inputs here and we're crawling, so I bet it's got to be 125. Yep, it sure is. I'm not going to overreact to this. We're going to move on and test Bluetooth as well, but we'll talk about the polling rate in the wrap-up. Just to save you guys a little pain, I'm skipping about half of this test, but long story short, Bluetooth results are similar but a little bit worse. Max of 125 Hz, but averaging about 104 with average latency of about 9.5 milliseconds. Again, we'll talk about polling rates in the wrap-up. As you can see here, with dead zone set to 0, I'm not getting a perfect or consistent resting value. I'll be testing this out in-game momentarily to see if this results in any stick drift. As far as the circularity test goes, we got an average error of 0.2%, which is what we should see with these TMR joysticks. As we've shown in prior videos, this is a result you only see when the joystick circularity algorithm is set to circular. More than likely, the Tarantula Pro will have the option to enable RAW mode for a rectangular algorithm once it's supported by either the Gamesir Nexus app or Gamesir Connect. Just in case anyone is curious, I did find and download the Gamesir Connect app, which they do mention on the landing page for the Tarantula Pro. It does recognize the gamepad as the T3 Pro, but unfortunately you can't actually do anything with this program either, which is only in Chinese, and I did go ahead and risk clicking every option I could find anyway, and all it does is take you to support pages online, which are also in Chinese. Okay, I'm going to start with the good here. I've played for about 2.5 hours total with the Tarantula Pro, which is a small sample size, but it feels really good in-game, super responsive, and of course I'm talking about wired mode. This is my first experience with TMR sticks, which from my understanding are similar to Hall effect sticks in that they're magnetic resistance, but are also more energy efficient, which I guess I'm supposed to care about for some reason. Gamesir does state that their trademark MagRes TMR sticks are 12-bit, which my understanding is that the majority of controllers are 8 or 9-bit. Feel free to look up my Vader 4 Pro review if you want like 2 more sentences and a joke about that, but don't expect to learn much as I still don't really know how meaningful this actually is. I will say again though that these sticks and this controller overall feel super responsive. I also think this controller feels a bit more premium than most of my Gamesir controllers, which, it's a more expensive controller, so it should, right? Predictably, I also love the trigger stops. These feel amazing, and this really does give me hope that we'll see these more often in Gamesir products moving forward. I can't tell you how disappointed I'll be if these aren't included with the G7 Pro. But I have to say, overall, I have some concerns. I glossed over the wireless polling rate, and that's primarily because the controller isn't officially available in the US yet and doesn't have app support, so I kind of expect that's something that will be resolved. I assume there will be firmware updates for both the controller and the dongle, and I won't be surprised if that happens on the 30th when these start shipping. One thing I sincerely hope comes with app support is the ability to map keybinds to the suite of extra programmable buttons, but I'm very concerned that won't be the case based on this section of the manual, which indicates that only controller inputs can be mapped to these buttons. If that's actually the case, then the 9 programmable buttons is kind of a gimmick. It's not actually that useful, I suppose, for setting up macros for combos and whatnot in fighting games, but generally speaking, those buttons aren't all that accessible. I just don't get it. Gamesir has done a 4 rear button design before. This is a stock image of the $23 T4 Pro. I've never owned one of these controllers, so I can't say how good or bad they are, but I sincerely wish they would utilize this design on one of the more premium controllers so I could test it out. It really feels like the Tarantula Pro would have been the perfect time for this, and I just don't get why they didn't do that here. Also, whether the wireless polling rate gets fixed or not, I think it's pretty rough that Gamesir didn't include a quality USB cable with this controller, particularly because it's designed with a recessed USB-C port just like every other Gamesir controller I own, which means this port is like almost proprietary. Don't get me wrong, I have a half dozen Gamesir controllers laying around, so I have lots of cables, but what about people that don't? Just testing what was around my desk, I have 10-foot cords for the Wolverine V3, the Xbox Elite controller, and the PowerA Ops V3, none of which will fit the Gamesir. In fact, the only non-Gamesir cable I have that will work is an iPhone cable. Lastly, I kinda wish they hadn't done this movable face button design. I don't think it's necessary, and I worry about potential issues with it in the future. It's loud, as you can hear in these clips, and you could say, well, just don't use it, but the issue is that the thing moves every time the controller turns off or on for no apparent reason. It doesn't matter what position they're in when you turn it off or when you set it on the base, it just moves. I said that was the last thing, but real quick, I just want to harp on the membrane face buttons again. I didn't talk about this too much, and yes, I know some people actually prefer membrane face buttons, but to me, this feels like a downgrade coming from the last 2 Gamesir controllers I've used, the Collide and the G7HE. I wish instead of spending the money and resources developing this movable face button design, they had just opted for mechanical face buttons instead. Overall, I think the jury is still out on this controller, at least for me. I'm going to be using the Tarantula Pro exclusively from now until the official US release, and then we'll see what changes come with proper software support. I may do a follow-up video if there's enough content to warrant it, but if not, I'll definitely pin a comment to this video going over the changes. I hope this video helped you out, and if so, please subscribe if you haven't already. Likes are also appreciated, and as always, I try to react and respond to all comments. I'll be doing more reviews regularly, so I hope to see you back here again soon. Thanks for watching.